All right. Okay, everyone, welcome to this webinar. I am thrilled. I don't think I've ever had this many folks on a webinar before, so this is a really big and exciting day. And as you've heard, we're kicking off this new series on framing adolescent health. Are you sending the right message? And you've heard from our colleagues at the University of Minnesota and via Ohio, Rena Large, managing all of this excellence for us. And again, I just want to welcome you and let you know that we are in for an exciting ride today. Hopefully you saw this flyer and you've seen that we've got a bunch of sessions after this one. And my intention with this very first session is just to sort of kick us off. And you can see by that big red box on my slide that this might be a rough road. I'm not going to go deep into any one single framing issue. I'm just going to give you sort of the big picture, or the bottom line and the top line. I realize I'm mixing my metaphors all over the place, but here we are. So I'm putting this content warning up both to give you a forecast of what's to come, but also to let you know that I'm going to be traipsing through things that I personally believe are painful to hear and to wrestle with, and really confront what my role and our collective role as adolescent health professionals is in moving our agenda forward. As always, please push back and please let me know what you're thinking in the chat box. You'll see many chances where I really need to know where you are, what you're thinking. It's going to make this webinar much better. Before I get going, and here we go, I really need some chat box action here. Lots going on in the news. Olympics are over, but there's still a lot going on that's showcasing and focused on what's going on with young people. How are you feeling? How are you feeling about the state of things today? I phrased it this way: one word or phrase that describes your mood when you're thinking about how our world treats young people. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Catherine. I'm hoping everyone can see these words. And concerned, optimistic, loving it. Sorry, where is this going to? Scary, where is this going to? Yes, yes, thank you. Disenfranchised, wonderful and disgusted. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Jenny. And these are sort of the responses that I was thinking where I was going to get, because there's so much to be excited about. At the same time, there's so much that is just dark and challenging and depressing, and it is puzzling, and it is angry making, and all those things. And again, I don't mean to pile on. I'm going to end with something optimistic, but these are some hard messages today. And I've asked the question, right? We're framing adolescent health, and we are the collective adolescent health community. And the question is, are we sending the right message? And for me, the bottom line, and I speak to this and own this myself, is no. Frankly, every time we present our data about adolescents and their health risks and health risk behaviors, we are sending the wrong message. In fact, and I'm going to push this as far as I can right now, when we identify ourselves as a specific health topic focused person, I'm a teen pregnancy prevention specialist, I do violence prevention, I work in STDs with adolescents. Even naming ourselves that way is sending the wrong message. Now, I need to be clear. I have a maybe different perspective, right? My background, as many of you know, comes from the private sector. And I spent the early parts of my career right out of college as an advertising executive in San Francisco. And you can see just how long ago that was when you look at the price of this computer. I'm hoping you're giggling. And just for kicks, that was just the box. That didn't include the monitor back in those days. I don't know, can you see how much RAM it has? Something like, ooh, maxed out at 32 megabytes of RAM. Woo-wee. Okay, so this was my world. I come from this perspective. You all have trained me and gotten me smart. At the same time, I can't really leave this world behind. Folks have seen this slide and this image before, and I bring it up to set up this idea that when we're thinking about communicating with folks, The question advertisers always ask is, what are those people thinking? Not, what do I want to say? Because if this ad was about what the Hewlett-Packard engineers wanted to say, there certainly wouldn't be a dog and a guy with cute hat and ears, right? It would be much more about the speed or capacity or comparisons of performance with other computers. And this concept, right, that when communicating, you really need to be clear on what your audience thinks and feels about your topic or your issue or your product, right? That is the same thing that bridges from the advertising world into the field of cognitive linguistics or framing or strategic communications, whatever you want to call it. And holding on to that idea, understanding what people think, that's where we're going to live and work throughout this webinar series. So greetings from Minnesota. It actually does look like this today. We just got dumped on with lots and lots of snow here. So it's very, very beautiful, even though we might be a little bit tired of that snow. Yes, Lisa, it's like calling sushi cold dead fish. Right on. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm talking about here. Thank you for that. Loving my comments, chat section. Okay, so you probably have seen a lot of this before because you signed up for this, but you're talking to someone who works at the University of Minnesota with a team of people, right? And that my team is the State Adolescent Health Resource Center, and that's Rena and Kristen. And we are proud to be best friends with anybody who's working on adolescent health in state health departments. And right now, because of the way the focus of MCHB is, we are extremely attentive to National Performance Measure 10, which is increasing the rate of well visits among adolescents. And as such, we become the Adolescent and Young Adult Health National Resource Center. I also work with a group at the University of Minnesota that's funded by the CDC as the Prevention Research Center, and it's one in a network of universities around the country that are focused on prevention research, not just adolescents, although there are a number of them. The PRCs should be your best friend if you're working on these issues because they can help you understand evaluation, research, and outreach. So you know where I am these days. I sit with researchers, public health professionals, youth activists, evaluators, clinicians, et cetera, here at the University of Minnesota. And because my background was in advertising and communications, I've been doing work like this for quite a while, trying to train or enrich or grow or challenge the way we talk about what we do. And this is my oldest slide. And what I'd like to do is go to work with state or state health departments and do this kind of presentation. We've been framed, advertising secrets that build public support for young people. I didn't make that clever name about we've been framed. Somebody in Oregon did. Thank you, Oregon. But you can see I'm leveraging this advertising secrets. But also buried in my title from this old slide is this idea about building public support for young people. Because that's where my perspective comes into play. I think our communications goal, most important communications goal, let me put it that way, should be about building public support. Why? Why should we be working on building public support, right? Why we want people to feel favorably about our stuff, not just for the feels, right, but also because, oh no, oh here it is, because all that public support turns into the stuff that we really, really need, right? We need mentors, we need volunteers, we need funding, we need resources, we need a copy machine, we need transportation, we need the votes for the policy that we know is going to be effective. All of those things depend on having an attitude or perception in the public sphere that is favorable towards adolescents and the work that we do. Now, I don't know if you noticed, and I'm going to go backwards. Did you notice a difference in the two pictures that I put up here? This was version 1. This was what, I don't know, 2001 to 2006 maybe. And here we go. This is 2006 beyond. In about 2006, somebody called me on my picture and said, you're talking about sending the right message, but you're not. Why? What was wrong with the message I was sending with the image that's on the bottom, the first image? And I'm bringing this up both to make the point that there are multiple goals at play here, but also that we, me, you, we are all going to step in it and make mistakes all the time. And as long as we are watching for them and correcting them, that's just fine. But nobody jumped in. Nobody said, what's wrong? What's wrong with this picture? What's different about the messages that these, oh, here we go, Laura. The newer one shows more youth. It shows that youth are doing the work, not adults. Absolutely, absolutely. And who is leading the youth work in these two pictures? Is it different? Like who's the sort of hero, instructor, person that's in charge? Thank you, Eden. Yes, it is. It is the white woman who is in charge, right? And this is a trope that is used over and over and over and over and over again. And I am all busy, Miss Adolescents, we got to focus on young people, and the young people are engaged, and I'm telling the whole world that this photograph is the kind of photograph that changes people's attitudes about young people, because it does. At the same time, it's totally reinforcing the structural racism or the privilege inherent in our society today around race. And me, Miss Communications expert, never even noticed until somebody pointed it out. So you can have multiple goals. Thank you. Thank you for the definition of a trope. Awesome. And again, people who can jump in and enhance the things I'm talking about here, please do. It's a webinar. It's not that easy to chat, but I appreciate the stuff in the window. So this really starts begging the question of what are the goals? Like, what are you really trying to accomplish? And can I do both things at one time, right? I picked that first photograph being clueless, but also because visually I really liked how it was going. I liked how the two people framed the sides. It was clear that there was instructions going on. In the other picture where Ayolanda is the center of the attention here, it was a little darker, blah, 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 right? And so here I am trying to juggle aesthetic goals, message goals, and totally leaving out part of the message goal that was critical and not being aware of it. So fixed it, you can fix it too. Okay, so I'm getting into the stuff now. Here's one of my favorite photos. I used this photograph as a litmus test. I would like you to type one word that is your reaction or your expression when you see this awesome photograph. Oops, sorry, I didn't want to taint it like that. What's your reaction when you see this photograph? Smiling, fun, creativity, silly, fun, smiling, creative and fun, fun, excellent. What do you think? What? Laughing, happiness, laughing, silly, fun. Absolutely. Can you imagine somebody else who would have a different opinion on when they see this photograph? And the answer is yes, the store owner, absolutely, right? Maybe if you're a parent, you're like, oh boy, what's going to happen? The school nurse thinking headlights. That's a good one, Amber. Materialism, right? Like, what is that about? Is that the only fun that we have? All of that stuff. Excellent. Yes, grow up, right? So while we look at young people and they're like, awesome, there's a whole lot of other people that do not look or think that way. And that's, again, where we're trying to go, back to the cold fish and the sushi. What people think about young people, what people think about young people's health issues, all of that creates the framing challenges that I told you I was going to share with you today. And this is where it gets ugly. Now, you're going to see under my little red box there I have references. And when we get into the meat of this in the next sessions, and actually in this one today, you're going to see the exact places that I took this insight from. A lot of times I've sort of massaged it and turned it into my own stuff. But I want you to know that this is largely based on communications research. And I've got a list for you of all the places that are doing this work so you can look at it and pursue any specific topic you might be interested or go deeper into what's happening. And largely these groups are trying to figure out, well, what do people think? And they're really also very focused on social issues. So where with Hewlett-Packard, it was about what do people think about computers. In these instances, it's what do people think about social issues, right? Whether it's adolescence or early childhood education or disability rights or all of those things. So, and the list is on the website. I don't know about that. I don't think so, Carol, I'm sorry. But we'll make sure everybody gets that. Okay, so what people think. Okay, heavy sigh now, heavy sigh. I'm gonna go through what people think about our favorite people in the world. First off, you look at this picture and you don't necessarily see scary, right? You might be seeing the young man who's leading the youth council, or the young man who led the entire STI statewide testing day. But really, most people, I'm talking public audiences here, think that teenagers are scary. Turns out that word teenager is actually the cue. Teenagers begs other. Teenagers begs different. Teenager begs bad. And I put scary there, and I think that particularly when we're talking about male-gendered folks, that's perceived as violent. I'm scared because they're violent. And look at the things in the chat list, right? Lisa's saying, I'm looking at somebody trying to figure it out. Or he looks sad, like he's struggling with something. And we all know that those are the things that are going on. And what I need you to walk away thinking about is the fact that other folks don't look at it that way. Oh, and by the way, it's all their fault. Pick any health topic that we associate with young people and know that when we talk about it, the perception is it's all their fault. Obesity, it's their fault. Violence, it's their fault. STIs, pregnancy, it's their fault. That, again, is sort of the top-line reaction from public audiences when they think about teenagers' health issues. Can you see the little citations down there now? BMSG is the Berkeley Media Studies Group, and Frameworks is Frameworks. There it is. And Lisa, again, way to lead us here. That's what we're talking about trying to do is how do we become these change agents knowing that people think this way? Female gender, still scary, probably in a different way. The word I had there was slutty. I started to get nervous about putting that out into the universe with 86 people. Yeah, holding on to that one a little bit. And again, how does our work, how do the messages out in the universe that we often generate support this or get in the way of it and defray it, right? The book on the top, this is a bit old now, How Young Women Pursue Sex, Delay Love, and Lose It Both, Unhooked, right? Going off that hooking up trend. Or the sort of, oh gosh, what's the word for when we make it like purient and, ooh, alarming number of teenage girls have STDs. And what are we perpetuating with this message as well, right? Is this sexual health thing, it's their fault. Who is they? They's teenagers, but which teenagers specifically? Girls. And which girls specifically? Looks like it's black girls, right? And I know that's not the intention of this article. Is it? Is it? Here's another one. Sex is basically, fundamentally about risk, danger, and harm. Consider every sexuality-based content that we in public health or our big leaders in the community put out there. Doesn't it usually start with sexual risks or STDs? And in this case, when you click on sexual health over there, you can see, like, it's just a big, long laundry list of all the problems. Very little about the good stuff, relationships or love or being part of development or what it means to have connections or, oh, I just am about to say pleasure, but I didn't say that. Did I say that? I think I said that. All this work came from a group funded by the ACLU who wondered, why do we not require sex ed when so many parents want it? And they did this research trying to uncover what the attitudes and perceptions were around that. Furthermore, teen pregnancy is really a doomed life. If you are somebody who's young and get pregnant, your life is over, and let's be honest, so is the life of your young baby. March of Dimes. Who doesn't love the March of Dimes? We all love the March of Dimes, but read this copy. Life might be difficult for a teenage mother and her child. They're more likely to drop out of high school. They don't graduate from high school. Their education is cut short, and they may lack job skills, making it hard to keep a job. They may become financially dependent or on public assistance. They live in poverty. They go on welfare. Their kids drop out, live in poverty, right? The list goes on and on. And I'm not necessarily saying that these statistics are wrong. And there's another conversation maybe where we could debate the merits of this, because I know that there's science that goes in many directions here. But we hold up teen pregnancy as the worst possible thing that can happen, and make the doomedness the reason why people should pay attention to it. And what message is that sending? This is maybe one of the hardest ones to swallow. When we present our information about health disparities, thinking that this is going to be a compelling message that, oh my gosh, Minnesota really needs to do a better job supporting American Indian, Black, and Hispanic youth, right? That is not how this data is read. It's interpreted instead as, well, those people sure need to get their act together. Deep breath. Deep breath. Last one, I think. Last one. A lot of this, in addition, is driven by the way Americans in particular think about responsibility and thought. The framing folks talk about individualism as the first language of Americans. And that plays itself out in how they assess blame or problems. And you've seen this in some of the slides I just led with, right? When confronted with these health issues, the first thing they're going to think about is, what is that individual doing or not doing to be healthy, right? And so the matter of health is about doing what this gal is doing, as opposed to perhaps addressing the many, many concerns that impact someone's health, right? Does our commercialized society support good health? Does the prevalence of fast food or the economics of calories, right? How does all that play into the obesity epidemic? And do we talk about that? And I bring up the obesity epidemic because that community, even despite that word, are doing a kind of good job illuminating some of this, saying, hey, food desert or food swamp or all of that. How much do we do it in our other topic areas? And do we, as public health professionals, right, in this community, do we make it this way too? I think you know where I'm going now. It's just the nature of our communications for a variety of systemic or disciplinary or, I don't know, organizational reasons that we play right into this and we perpetuate it ourselves. I have a whole Pinterest page filled with examples of us demonizing young people or pointing the finger at them as the problem here. And even things as innocuous as putting out the statistics of prescription drug use or how many people are drinking alcohol, which we know is critical data, right? Even this is problematic because collectively, takeaway is to reinforce the dominant perception that teenagers are a problem and it's all their fault. If we collectively are committed to a world of growth and fabulousness, a place where young people are going to be resilient, find their way, be fabulous, do what needs to get done, we have got to stop making it about disaster and drama and trauma. Well, trauma, not the right word. We've got to stop making about crisis and problems. I know there are crises. I know there are problems. How can we talk about it in a way to get at that seriousness while emphasizing what's possible? So all of this starts to beg the question for me, is building public will really a shared goal, right? I made that race chart. Well, okay, I didn't make it because it's beautiful. It's graphically better than anything I can do. But I supported that. That's in a publication that I'm responsible for. By doing that, I know it's a problem, and I did it anyway. How about all our emphasis on ROI? Right, this is a very old version, but we've been calculating the cost of teen pregnancy for a really long time. How does this headline support the larger perceptions of young people? So not only are they a problem, but they're an expensive problem? Again, we need that data. I know we do. We do not need that headline. And how about the fact that our primary data source, the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Study, right, just ensures that this is the context or the frame for what we do. Anybody want to jump on board? See if we can start reframing the name of our survey? Oh, Carol, you're getting to my next slide. Hold that thought, because you're absolutely right. And there are no black and white answers on this, right? I can put out that chart and still think I'm going to work on changing perceptions. And I think that there's things that we can do, but I want to be really clear that in some respects, this public will goal is going to be a tension against our other goals, right? And anytime you find yourself like, I need to create awareness of the increases in gonorrhea transmission rates, you need to think, oh, okay, I do, and I still need to make sure I'm not making this about young people doing bad stuff all the time or being promiscuous or whatever it's going to be. How can I do both? And there's a lot of progress on this front. This is an old slide, how we've seen, especially in sexual health communities, folks changing their names, right? Going from the National Organization on Adolescent Pregnancy, Parenting, and Prevention to the Healthy Teen Network. Look at Iowa. Iowa, as far as I know, has always been Eyes Open Iowa. Illinois never even went there. TeenWise was still, they were a Minnesota Organization on Adolescent Pregnancy, Prevention, and Parenting, right? They changed their name. And what's the latest one? Can't believe it. Look at this. The national campaign changed their name. Holy cow. It's an amazing, fabulous thing. It gives me so much hope because the entire field is moving that direction. Now, Angel Smith is saying here, focus on the system structures and not specifically on the person. Advanced framing. Right there. Right on. That's exactly what we need to be doing. It's shifting the focus away from the individual teens and onto the systems and structures that are creating these circumstances. That is not to say we are not going to talk about the individual teens. We certainly are. We just need to change the weighting or the emphasis or the order of how we do that. Okay, so I just want to give you a little minute. So Angel and Carol have kind of jumped in, and we're getting right back to Carol's point because there's some pushback on what I'm talking about here. But how is this making you feel? You can type in the chat box, you can do whatever, but I've learned that this is kind of heady stuff right now. Oh, and Marcia's saying confused, and Keith is saying hard but exciting and relieved, unsure how to get in, excited. Marcia, if you could say more about confused, I would love to hear it. Excited, empowered. Okay, good. I'm not totally Debbie Downer. That's good. I appreciate that. And part of the reason I go to personal reflection right here, right, is as somebody who makes the communications materials, you know, for my researchers or my colleagues, Angel, thank you, Heavy. I struggle a lot with my my status of being complicit in this, right? Every research project that ends up having a really narrow focus on the prevalence of an adolescent behavior or the risk-taking characteristics or how many kids have an STD, I start to just quiver with how can we do this? And is this that critical? And where should we be starting? And by the time I'm reading the research article, is that too late? Or so the word for me over the past 2 years has been just complicit. I just don't know how to say it otherwise. So here's Marcia saying, thinking ahead to changing messages can be confusing, right on, because multiple goals, multiple audiences, right? Contemplative and reflective, frustrated. I'm literally working on a teen birth profile right now. I want to make sure I don't mess it up. So back to Mariah, and if I'm pronouncing names badly, please forgive me, but Mariah, we are going to mess it up. You know what I mean? We are, and we're going to learn from it and make it better. And anybody who's working on a project like that, you know where I live, send me an email and we can talk. All right, and these sessions are going to get there as well, so more back to that. All right, Carol's point. Here's the pushback slide. So I'm all Miss, let's go to this one, happy, green, loving, growing, fabulousness, not danger, crisis, problems, right? That's where I'm coming from. And what are the flaws in this argument? And Carol already named one of them that's really, really critical, and that is it doesn't get a headline. It doesn't get a headline, right? Young people doing awesomeness, much harder to get a headline than, oh, STI rates, it's a crisis. What else? Is there anything else where you're like, yeah, I see what you're saying, but people may think you're avoiding the problem, right on. Yep. Don't talk about that. You don't want to talk about those pregnant teenagers, right? And do we render it invisible? That's a whole huge one with my stuff around breaking down our data by race. If we do break it down by race, and there's huge disparities, and because we live in a country historically and currently embedded in structural and institutional racism, am I perpetuating that? Or am I rendering it invisible? We have whole groups who want the data out and used in the message. Yeah, right on. And I'm right there with Carol, right? I work with researchers. If I'm all like, yeah, we need to kind of make that secondary point about that actual rate, they're like, yeah, we did all this research and got funded by the NIH to do it, so you better make that data point really, really big. Yep, right on. And we collect them. We spend a lot of money collecting that data too, right? And the belief is that data in and of itself is going to be compelling, but it is to what end, right? All right, I got some more. Here's some more. What did I say? Attention, right? Good news doesn't get as much attention as bad news does. Increasing rates of STIs or teen pregnancy get a lot more coverage than declining rates. We want to get coverage in the newspapers. We're not going to make it to the first page unless we do. Overlooked, that invisibility factor, funding, right? If you don't scream about what a disaster and a problem this is, are you going to get the funding to do it? It's also the nature of our discipline. We're quantitative people, and we need to prove and have evidence. Gosh, again, it really hurts me. We are so reliant, rightly so, on using evidence and data. Was there a challenge with that too, when we're saying that maybe the data isn't the best and most compelling thing? And then finally, yeah, it is very hard. It is hard. It is more than just slapping together this chart and putting it out there. It's thinking, what do I do with this to give it the context so that I am sending the right message, or I'm sending a broader, bigger message? And again, I'm all like, no chart. But if we put in a cool caption, or if we put this chart next to something that really calls out social determinants or structural racism, right, or looks at Minnesota's history of how we've treated the American Indian community, right, if we do that, can we broaden the picture here? And is that easy? No, it is not. No, it is not. Okay, so Jenny, to what end? This is the key, right? To what end? And those goals, here we go again, back to the goals. And are you all ready for like a 30-year project? Because changing these attitudes, wow, that's going to take a long time. But freaking out a legislator into voting for a sex ed bill by telling them scary statistics, man, you could pull that off in a couple weeks. So which one? Okay, excellent pushback. I don't want to leave this as a total bummer, so I'm going to transition a little bit and tell you that we can do this. We're going to stumble and fall and have many, many challenges and got to experiment and try, but we can get folks on a different path. And the cognitive linguists and all these framing researchers have great instructions and tools for us, and the rest of the series is going to go hardcore into that. Here's the kind of things that we're going to talk about specifically, right? Like choosing our language super intentionally, right? Like the use of the word teenager, nope. We want to build public will and support, can't use that word, but we can use other words. Some of these are easy, some of them are hard. You can imagine I'm not going to, the framers are not going to really like the phrase that we use all the time, at-risk youth. Can we reframe that? This next one, lead with values instead of data. And back to Carol's point, right? People are like, no, we got to put out the percentage right now. And what we learned from the framers is we got to lead differently. We're going to start talking about benefits or values or shared beliefs before we get there. The data in and of itself should never exist without some sort of context and frame around it. This is a particularly awful thing for epidemiologists and my hardcore quantitative researchers to grapple with, because the data is the data. Why do you need to tell people what it says, right? Promoting solutions. Instead of us being, here are all of the problems, one of the key framing tricks is to lead with what is actually working. It gets people thinking about things in a different way. It gets people into that, oh my gosh, we can do this. We can do this stuff. Educate on development. This is one of the meatiest parts, if you're an adolescent health person, is figuring out how to change the way we talk about stuff into a developmental context all the time. This isn't about sexual risk behaviors. This is about the fact that young people are going through a very critical developmental phase that includes their sexuality and their gender. How do we support that? Next one, illuminate the social determinants of health. I can't remember who said it, but that was exactly her point. I'm going to scroll back in here, or you can name yourself because I'm not doing so good at finding you. But somebody else already said this, right? Let's make it about, hey, thank you, Angel. Let's make this about the structures and the systems, the contexts, more than it is about the young people. We're not forgetting about the young people, but we are saying there's more here. And that becomes this next point, focus on our role, not their problems. We need to challenge the isms wherever they come up. We all collectively face one around ageism, and you know the rest of them. And throughout our work, they are rife. And then my final one here is leverage your standing. I know you are not going to believe me, but you all are kind of interesting. You're way more interesting than most people in the private sector, because what you do is something that like everybody has some connection to somehow. So when you talk about these issues from where you come from, people want to hear it. They might not agree with you, and they might want to push back and argue and that sort of stuff, but you have some standing, and I'm looking for you to use that. Okay, I got to catch up with these awesome quotes. You need to frame, to think about how to solve the issue or promote hope. Yes, otherwise people are going to interpret the data negatively. Right on, right into solutions land. Thank you. Bring target population to the conversation. Oh, okay. Abiola, beautiful name. We are totally 100% getting there, because us being the messengers, not optimal, right? And yeah, I'm with you on target population. Ooh, boy, challenging word, right? Folks I've been looking at have been moving towards priority or something like that. We should be collaborating with those affected, empower young people. Right on. That is 100% where we need to go. All right, so these points are what we're going to dig into more deeply in the rest of these sessions. And what I try to do is give you the research background of it, show you examples of how it's being done or not being done, and then literally ask you to play with it and how you would do it. For example, you know, I've got this little formula for how do you challenge it when somebody says something bad about teens. You know, they're like, those kids these days, they're wearing leggings as pants, leggings aren't pants, don't they know, girls, blah, 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 blah. Right? What do you say instead of, oh, you're a loser? Can you use framing and talking about adolescent development to get them thinking a bit differently about what's going on here? So that's one way we get to apply this knowledge. And then, of course, the other is how we present the data that we have about adolescent health. And for years and years, I've been criticizing how the CDC does it on their website and highlighting how this Minnesota group has done it in their reports. And it's not a fair criticism because of the job of the CDC, and it is a fair criticism because of the job of the CDC. So maybe we'll get some new ideas here, and I invite you to bring your own work to the next session and put it through the sort of analysis that we're going to end up doing here. Because again, it's not all bad. There are like 4 simple things that anybody could do to change the giant data section on their website to better frame it and to get these issues up front as opposed to as a fallback or behind. All right, so I'm trying to get back up to the top now. I'm trying to get us not quite as depressed as maybe we were. And I want to just talk about awesomeness for a minute because this stuff is really hard. And how do you stay in it? How do you stay on top of it? How do you know you're going to make a mistake and still try to work it out? I just wanted to point out that young people are not the only ones that do weird stuff in stores. That is me. And under my picture there, my friend Kristen Teipel took that photograph. And under that photograph is the phrase heartbreak and hope. And I'm bringing up this phrase because it was used to describe the woman who is sort of the emotional center of the group that I work with at the University of Minnesota, the Konopka Institute for Best Practices in Adolescent Health. And here in this photograph, you see Gisela Konopka with those awesome glasses, and she's teaching social group work at the University of Minnesota back in the 60s. And we exist because going to the Derby, yes I am. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Lisa. She existed to support young people, and her primary thing was the way we collectively, people in the youth serving community, do our jobs is central to this. And it was her belief that if we have a community of people that are strong and care and get it and are creative about it, we can do it. We can do this job. Gisela Konopka was born in Germany in the early 1900s, and she grew up when the German youth movement was getting its big rise. You can see this picture over here. She looks kind of staid, but when you read her work, she was out there like writing poetry and discussing philosophy and frolicking through the beautiful German countryside with other young people, you know, talking about how they could make their home a fabulous and perfect and wonderful place. And as you can imagine, that didn't last long. The rise of the Nazi movement took over the German youth movement. And Gisela, as a German Jew and an activist, she was a real labor agitator and spent most of her time down working with folks doing physical labor to try to help get them into unions. The rise of the Nazis was close to being a death knell. She was captured and imprisoned. She would get out, she'd try to make her way to another country and get captured and imprisoned again. But she eventually made her way to the United States, and you can see this picture of her and her husband, who was not Jewish and who ended up fighting in the war, eventually reconnected in the United States after the war. And telling you this story because the thing about Gisela Konopka was, because of these experiences, her empathy and love for young people and her understanding of what it's like to be incarcerated or imprisoned or bound by institutions or structures was sort of the single driving force in her world. And that's why people talked about her in terms of heartbreak and hope. She died not long after I started working at the Konopka Institute, and literally in the last week of her life, she went with another one of our colleagues down to one of the juvenile incarceration facilities. and sits at tables with young people who adults are scared of. And she's not there to talk at them. She's there to listen to them. And within 15 minutes, all of these kids are opening up to her and wanting to share and feeling heard. She's also famous in our circles because many people consider her the grandmother or godmother of healthy youth development. Back in the 70s, the feds asked her, well, you're the adolescent health expert. What does it take to keep young people healthy? What does it take to make young people healthy? And this is the list that she put in the journal article that she published. You can see the citation down here at the bottom. Do these look like public health goals to you? Does anybody have these on your state plan, your goals for STI reduction, your vision for where your agency is going to go, right? These don't look like typical health goals. These are all grounded in development, yes? And they're all looking at young people from a place of strength and awesomeness. And so when I am looking at the data chart and wondering, what am I going to do now? Or am I really going to fight over this? Am I really going to call out that federal representative that's, talking about suicide as being sort of a personal failing? Am I, when you're sitting in that spot wondering, is it worth it and how do I do it? For me, I pull up Gisela Konopka. And I want to ask you, what do you do? What do you pull up? Do you have something that you could fall back on where when you do step in it or need the strength, do you have something? What is that for you? I lost my little thing here, but private reflection, or if you want to share, please do. But besides walking away today with this idea that we need to be really considered and careful about how we talk about our work, and the fact that presenting our work is potentially really dangerous and problematic, I'm looking for you to pull into your heart and see what's there so that we can move forward and make it work. This handout is going to be in the download window when we're done. I have a note from Megan about it's all about relationships. Absolutely, not for STI reduction, but yes, right, in terms of having what kind of goals are on your pages. The curriculum we use for STI prevention and other related issues does concentrate on building healthy relationships. Right on. And again, I see so much progress in many of those fronts, right? Even the federally approved list of teen pregnancy prevention programs has a pretty good entrenchment in this concept of healthy youth development. And again, you all taught me this, right? You taught me that when we do address multiple developmental issues or concern, right? When young people's needs are met along these fronts, all of these health risks or health risk behaviors or these health problems are immediately impacted, right? And you can do it collectively. When young people are engaged or connected, having positive relationships, giving accountability, right? When those things are there, we see less teen pregnancy, we see less violence involvement, we see better eating patterns. All of that sort of stuff is true, and you believe it and you want it, yet we still struggle with how do we get our structures, our systems, our funding, all of that work aligned differently. I mean, does anybody on this call have the title of Health Youth Development Coordinator or broad adolescent health coordinator, promoter? You know, a lot of the adolescent health staff end up being really entirely focused on one particular health risk behavior. More and more innovative states are broadening it to become healthy youth development as the lead. Here's Polly, adolescent health director, focusing on 8 areas. And it is a challenge to cover everything, absolutely, absolutely. So this is one of the really big sort of structural naming things that, that you might want to think about. What's your title? Can you change it? Right, here's Debbie, Adolescent Health Consultant, right on. And even if you can't, even if you are in charge of the abstinence education program, can you adapt your title? Can you be the Adolescent Health Consultant, comma, sexuality educator, or something like that? And again, we're going to look at many versions or variations on ways that you can do this. But I ask you, as you leave the call today, and you're looking around, right, how much do you see where we're looking at strengths, or we're looking developmentally, or looking holistically, versus how much is specific to a health issue or health topic? And here's Keith, he's the Adolescent Health Outreach Coordinator. This is good, you all. You can pick new names, pick new titles right off of this, right? All right, so Carol actually is. Nice. No pressure, no pressure. Okay, so I am actually getting very close to the end of my slides here. I'm going to really end us on a fabulous note, but and then I'm going to stay on for questions, so you might get a little bit of your time back this afternoon. We will release the phone lines. But one of our other colleagues pointed out that the other big thing about framing this issue is for us to not be the ones talking and to find ways to create room, give voice, amplify the voices of young people. And that's why I am super hopeful, because they already are, right? Would we have been having this Me Too movement if young people hadn't been so visible and vocal about these issues over the past couple of years and what was going on? I mean, check out the top trending tweets, and I know there's, you know, some like sketchy, well, it's just a hashtag, blah, blah, blah. But the fact of the matter is these hashtags are converting into agenda-setting strategies, so that the news has to pay attention and has to look at these things and bring them up into the front page. And that's what's happening when young people are doing it, elevating these issues. Are people familiar with this Carry That Weight campaign that this young woman did? Oh man, where is my reference on this one? Abiola says yes. I would love it if anybody else wanted to jump in and share the story. Maybe we'll do this after. We'll do it after I run out of slides here. But this is what's going on. And my next question becomes, what's our job as adolescent health people or public health people in this role, right? They're out there, they're doing it. What are we supposed to do to help? I became really passionate about giving young people's voice this room way back when the Dream Defenders became very, very visible and vocal in Florida after the murder of Trayvon Martin. And what is, you know, they're still around. Somebody else has taken over the visible stuff, but here are these young people. So what's our role? If they're already doing this work, right? If they are building a powerful, deep local organization and movement, how can public health support them? Is there a way for us to reframe what we do to come up and under and support their work instead of asking them to jump in and support ours? And what happens when we let them have the voice? It's scary, it's dangerous, it's tricky, absolutely. Do our violence prevention efforts take into consideration the community's work? And if Black Lives Matter has framed this issue, do we not have kind of a responsibility to come in and support where they're going? I mean, we talk a lot about community engagement. Young people are presenting us with the opportunities for that engagement. In the midst of everything that's been going on, yeah, Andra, not in conservative states, yes, we got you. In the midst of everything that's going on, what has been happening with the Dreamers? And how many of you are charged with supporting this community and this population, knowing that this entire situation is driving health issues and health concerns? Are we quantifying the experience of these young people in any of these settings and how that's impacting their health? They're out there talking about it. We need to stand behind them. And of course, this one is the most visible one right now. And I include this Newsweek statistic in the visual here because, again, if this young woman, if this young person has twice as many Twitter followers as the NRA, then she has 150 times more Twitter followers than any of us do. And she, through her voice, is changing the frame. What are we going to do to support that? Here's Angel. Can you actually be doing sustainable and positive youth and or health equity work if we do not address political issues? Yeah, let's take that one home to chew on. 100% agree. And I'm sure so many people on this call, the minute I put the Black Lives Matter slide up, we're just like, oh, wow, I don't know, right? And yet, these are the issues that are impacting the health of young people. I'm not saying that we all need to get out on the streets and join that movement. I am saying, how do we acknowledge that role and make sure we support what's going to get young people to be healthy, not get them to be healthy, create a world where they can choose and be healthy. So you see my last slide here is, and people are already jumping on, awesome. Who's doing it, right? Who's got this? Because if we all start supporting and amplifying what they're doing, awesome. Because you add credibility to their stuff, you broaden their reach, and frankly, you make them feel great. So I like to keep giant lists of this, and this is the last thing that I would ask you to do is, if you've got a group that you know that's out there doing it, even if it's just your advisory group, right, let me know so that I can put them in my list of Twitter followers and pay attention and retweet. This photograph is from some young people here in Minneapolis who did that Bowls for the Hungry Bowls project. I'm sure folks have heard about that as well. Okay, so is FFA Future Farmers and Deborah 4-H, right? Excellent. Boys and Girls Club, Framework for Leadership and Training, right on. Absolutely, thank you, Ashley, right? And again, I notice you probably didn't mean to, but subtly, I get really urban because I sit in urban, right? And it doesn't even, my frame for 4-H and my rural friends is, yeah, not so much. But they absolutely are. So how do we, you know what I mean? How do I change me? Thank you. Thank you for reframing for me. And we have to remember, hashtag this is public health. Absolutely. Right on. So anybody that wants to, still would like to see any more folks that you've got to add to this giant list. Oh my gosh, I never ever am short on time. This is so incredible. I'm going to give you those last slides. This is what's next. Right. The next session, we are going to go through the actual, science and implications of what framing is and all about. Well, thank you, Jody. And use those examples to do some analysis and start looking at strategies that we're going to use to do the reframes. Thank you, Jody. So that's the next one on March 13th. And then we're going to go into more specific topics. You can see the one after that is about sexual health, and then we're going to go into the disparities topics as well. So I'm hoping that this was an adequate kickoff. I think you kind of know where I'm coming from. A lot of you know me already, but you get a sense of where this is actually focused and what's going to come up next. Now, I am going to officially, I don't know, Rena's going to help me out, officially not have slides up. And then we'll put the download window up for you to take the Gisela Konopka and all the references. Thank you, Lisa, so that you can take them and download them. We will make these slides available. It's a really big file format. So, really big file size, so it's kind of hard and lumbering. But I also just want to say to you, and I think did we record? Did we record? I think we meant to record. Do whatever you want with this to move it forward, right? If you want to be like, I listened to this crazy advertising lady and she said all these politically inappropriate things, here are these slides, right? Just do it, do it. Whatever you can use to move your agenda forward, please do. And know that I'm really always looking for examples and experiences to build off of, right? So if you are doing a teen birth study and you're trying, like, how do I frame this? It's not only good for you, it's good for me, because then I can share that with other people that are doing those challenges as well. So I see the framing citations and canonical requirements coming up here. I think if folks want to ask questions, why don't you type them in the chat window for now, and if a bunch of people bail, then we can open the phone lines. I want to thank you all for hanging in there with me, and geez, 80 plus people and folks for still using the chat window, so that was excellent. Really, really appreciated it. It makes it so much easier as a webinar presenter to be interesting when you all are talking to me, so thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I look forward to next time, and officially signing off, unless you want to stay on for questions. Thank you all.